Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy is a real head-scratcher. I should paraphrase that I'm not, nor have I ever been, a huge fan of superhero movies or comic books, so this review is strictly based off the gameplay and the story itself, on its own, with very little in terms of comparing it to either the comics or the movies that I don't have a lot of information about. This is actually a heavily underrated game that I believe few people have actually played or even heard about, and let's just say it's because of the price tag. However, with recent sales, it's clearly in a more fair range considering the content provided throughout the adventure. Starting off, when you load up a new file, the game really shoves it down your throat. The whole, we spent all of our budget on this soundtrack, and it's going to carry the experience. Which, while it can be disabled, only shows to you as a viewer looking in that even though they are willing to shell out millions of dollars simply for the soundtracks, they are not willing to put some aside for the actual development of the game. There are a lot of issues with the visuals and cutscenes when it comes to quality control, like having Quill in a transparency spot over his eyelid or small stutters in the loading of new scenes, and his hair and other features clipping through everything at times, right up to the bugs that can quite literally make it look like you're stuck because it doesn't tell you to press a completely irrelevant button that you've never used to back out of menus. It really just felt like bragging rights about how much money that they have to blow on Rick Astley, Black Sabbath, and other highly regarded classic songs, completely ignoring the fact that the game itself is slowly deteriorating over time. The first hour of gameplay is a very slow, unfunny, and quite cringe display of tutorials, character introductions, combat, and dialogue between the characters yelling when they could just speak normally, making a huge deal about such small things. I get that this is how Star-Lord and his team behaves, and he is supposed to come off as an obnoxious person, but the way that everybody is depicted here in the intro alone makes him look more like an edgelord. But if you stick it out, for the first chapter, it really does start to open up into a very compelling story, which is the biggest selling point, the way that the dialogue and character interaction carries the whole game. Though it does bounce in and out of this type of over-the-top content that makes you feel weirded out and not amused in the slightest, taking a few detours in trying too hard and being boring, slow, unfunny, and going right back to what you would expect from the Guardians.
Bartender, get me a cocktail stick. I need to poke my ears out.
There's a lot that only detracts from the experience, but the rest of the story, once again, backs it up, fortunately. I can't list off every single issue, but there are a lot of bugs and potentially game-breaking issues that present themselves the further you delve into the game once you get past Chapter 6 and straight into the endgame. From the Guardians not working until you reset the game, dialogue not showing up when they are talking to one another, specifically for Groot. And while it isn't that terrible, you can definitely tell that very little budget was actually devoted to actually testing the game or even fixing any of these issues, considering the game has been out for 3 years now. There didn't seem to be any reason for these things to happen other than bad luck or just running the levels too fast for the game to keep up maybe? Regardless, you're bound to run into a ton of bugs that will slow you down. But once again, the story is strong enough to compel you to push through it, but the final chapters really test your patience. Following Star-Lord and his team, Rocket, Groot, Gamora, and Drax, you'll find yourself chasing down some highly illegal materials in a restricted quadrant of space, on the hunt for a rare species of monster that they hope to make some quick creds on by selling it to Lady Hellbender. But after getting caught by Star-Lord's ex-girlfriend, who was a part of Nova Corps, shortly after having released an extremely dangerous creature after touching a stone of sorts, this plan of theirs backfires, lending them a heavy fine that they have to pay back in 3 cycles. Your decisions will have an impact on the story. It felt more like it changed the Guardians' hilarious rantings and dialogue towards each other more than anything else, making them more pissed enough to bring up a topic later on with arguments or sometimes very genuine heart-to-hearts. So it does kind of motivate you to go back and play through the game again to see everything else that the game has to offer for that good Guardians of the Galaxy humor. At times, your choices will also make the game harder or easier if you manage to persuade somebody to give you an item or guide you or even assist you through shortcuts and any other features.
Спасибо, Guardian of Galaxies.
It's got a lot of good music, but oftentimes there's just too much focus on it, especially with these long, drawn-out, and unskippable motivational speech cutscenes that boost your power and cooldowns, often which you will accidentally hit, making it even more annoying. You're sure to find something here that you can latch onto, making the game a better experience. This could be Drax and his hilarious, unintelligent, but highly intellectual brute force personality, but also the good-natured vibes of Rocket, when he's not fed up and rambling all the time.
Quill, I
really mean it. You saved their lives, man.
What?
Drax, throw him.
No!
Very well.
Peter!
It's okay, he'll land on his feet. I guess that only applies to...
It really does start off poorly, but it does open up pretty quickly. This is more or less a story than it is a physical game that you can freely roam around and explore. Think about it like a comic book or watching a movie, with a slow, drawn-out and mental thought process and cutscenes during combat that brings the team together and helps you build more bonds with each and every one of them. The combat itself is honestly pretty bland. The longer you play, the more bland it becomes. It's because it uses teamwork as a heavy focus, to the point where you just kinda stop playing as Star-Lord and instead manage your team and their skills to take down every enemy, especially if you're playing on hard mode. You can sure shoot at everything with your pistols, but that's not how the game is intended to be played. You'll slowly level up as you progress through the game, unlocking more skills based on how well you did in combat and gaining more EXP for everyone, and then using these new skills to help take out enemies with a lot of stylish combos when it comes off cooldown. While it sounds boring, you stay because their dialogue and banter makes up for everything, showing off the Guardians of the Galaxy in such an inviting way that makes you just want to sit there and take it all in as you laugh over the most mundane jokes. That makes you feel like the developers really thought out how to push and progress the dialogue that makes you respond in real life and then get a response a few seconds later, even if it was once again really stupid humor.
Drax, could you move a bit to the right? Why? Your big butt's a nice windshield.
You may shelter yourself behind my buttocks. Room to maneuver if something should attack.
How behind my ass?
Anybody else smell that? It really stinks back here.
It smells putrid.
Where is it coming from?
Oh, what the fuck?
Though this does start to die out as you reach the ending of the game, where all they are going to be doing is saying the same one-liners every couple of seconds, repeating themselves over and over again. This is why I stated that it's such a head-scratcher, because I really like the dialogue and the story, but man, is it hard to put up with the rest of the game when it starts to really get on your nerves. You're probably not going to want to play through this game if you look at it. I'm not saying it won't appeal to you, but because few people, myself included, realized this game even existed until now compared to when it was first launched, says a lot. So if you don't mind dull and tedious gameplay that becomes increasingly repetitive and buggy over time with more of a team management simulator on higher difficulties, and a lot of corny Guardians of the Galaxy jokes, and a really great story, then you're bound to be able to sit through this very long and drawn out game that feels like it goes on for a bit too long, but in the end it's totally worth it, all for that really good story. The game is in no way worth over $70. On sale it's a pretty good deal, but this really just felt like another cash grab by another big brand name, which makes it more expensive. Not because it looks fantastic or has solid gameplay, it's because of the word Marvel.